I have conflicting feelings about Thanksgiving. There are obvious reasons to appreciate the holiday, but the story of Thanksgiving is that the settlers came to the land, they were starving and struggling to survive, the Native Americans helped them survive, and then the two groups got together and celebrated with a feast. Then, in return, the settlers encroached on their land, raped their women, murdered them, stole their land, and broke every treaty that they ever made with the Native Americans, even to this day. And they did this all under the name of Christian values. It would seem obvious to someone who has even briefly skimmed through the Bible, or at least saw the movie, that the settlers are guilty of some obvious sins. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Cursed is the man who moves his neighbor's boundary marker. Evil shall not depart from the house of he who returns evil for good. But every year we continue to celebrate this betrayal with a gluttonous feast. Why? In many ways, we are conditioned by pastors to overlook abuse.
A covenant says this: I will do what I said whether you do or not. Whether you do your part or not, I will still do my part.
They portray overlooking these horrendous crimes as pious forgiveness.
What should you forgive? Everything, whether it's big or small. When should you forgive? Now. Aren't you glad that God is a covenant keeper? God is a God of covenants. What that means is this: God will do what He said whether you do what you said or not. If you're unfaithful, God remains faithful. If you don't do what you promised, God will still do what He promised. Why? Because He's a God of covenant. And do you know what I realized? We have very few human pictures or images on planet Earth of what a covenant is anymore. Most relationships are based on contract.
It is very covert and subtle the way these pastors redefine these terms to make you believe that because God has forgiven some imperfection in you, that you are supposed to overlook other crimes.
A contract says, if you do what you said, I will do what I said. But if you don't do what you said, I'm released, and I don't have to do what I said. A covenant is not like that.
Under this philosophy that Craig Hill has perpetrated, a covenant means that one person can completely renege on an agreement, and then the other person involved in the covenant is still under obligation to uphold the agreement. This type of agreement works exclusively in the favor of, say, a group of white males who invaded someone else's land, made covenants with them, and then refused to uphold their side of the agreement by exiling the Native Americans on the Trail of Tears.
A covenant is dependent on the word of the one who makes the covenant. It is not dependent upon the actions of the other party.
According to Craig Hill in Ancient Paths, a covenant is a standing agreement where one person does not have to do anything that he promised, but still reap the benefits of the agreement. This is much like the settlers reneging on their treaties with the Native Americans, but still keeping the land for themselves. The sly way Craig Hill introduces the topic as a strong base in godly moral values in terms of keeping a covenant misleads many people to believe that they would be breaking covenant if they simply expect that the other person does what they agreed to do. This is why I have conflicting feelings about Thanksgiving. Celebrating Thanksgiving can be like a failed marriage. Let's say, for example, that you married someone, and then that person you married abused you emotionally, financially, and sexually while you were married. You get divorced from that person, but then every year on the anniversary, his family gets together to celebrate the wedding feast. Why?